Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And today we are so excited to be joined by private investigators and new podcasters on upcoming show Private Eyes, Bari and Jen. Welcome so much. Thanks for joining us.
Yay.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm excited too. I have to say, the thought of having you on here has made me consider a lot of my digital footprint and all of these things. I got weirdly nervous about I don't know who would investigate me, but anyway.
Well, we know everything about you already.
I know, it's like I have a podcast where I'm telling my whole life, but
right. Nothing's really a secret.
I know. But still.
Except we don't know her fanfic author name, so if you can figure that out for me, that would be wonderful.
No,
Thank
please.
you.
Write it down. We'll figure it
out. Please.
Wait, did you say you know a lot about me? Because that's also but there's 15,000 of Samantha McVeys, which I found out later. And I was like, why is there so many?
I know, we're having a little trouble with that.
I'm a secret. Shh.
Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, can you both introduce yourselves to our audience?
Sure. I'm Bari Kroll.
And I'm Jen Rosant.
Yes. And you're both private investigators. Can you tell us how that came to be? How did that become something you did?
Okay, well, I'll start with that. And so how did I come to be a private investigator? It wasn't really by design. It was not something that I ever thought that I would do, although I kind of, I could see, but let's put it this way. When I meet people from high school and they find out that I'm doing this now, they all say they're not surprised, which I don't know if I should be happy or upset about, because I was a little bit, I don't want to say stalkerish, but I was very shy in high school. And when my girlfriend and I did not get invited to parties or things like that, we sometimes found ourselves just taking a walk by those places, listening in, finding out what's going on where we weren't. And so I think I've kind of always had that in my nature, but I certainly didn't think I was going to make a career out of it. So I worked for corporate for a number of years. And when I had my son, I thought for sure I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I just thought it's going to be delightful. I'm going to take naps. I'm not going to have to get up and do anything. It's going to be so great. And it wasn't like that at all. It was not like that. I found myself feeling very disconnected. I didn't have a lot of friends that had children at the time. So I was kind of alone, and I kind of really felt I was missing work. I missed working. So I was lucky that my old employer was able to, it was before hybrid was popular and even happening. They allowed me to do 2 days at home and 1 day was travel. And that was great. It was fine until the unit disbanded. And then I found myself without a job. And I wasn't really thinking of anything particular. And one day, I was driving my son around, hoping he'd take a nap, just driving aimlessly around town. And I happened to notice I had this weird knack for memorizing license plates and knowing car models and things like that. And I saw a friend of mine driving around town, and I saw her zoom by, and I called her up. I said, Stephanie, why aren't you at work? What are you doing driving around? And she said, why don't you just go be a private investigator already? And I said, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I literally went home that afternoon, and I had no expectations about what that even was. What did it mean to be a private investigator? So I made a bunch of phone calls. I was going through the phone book, and I called a bunch of guys, and some of them hung up on me, and some of them you're a girl, you've never been in law enforcement, click, 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 click. And I was lucky enough to find a guy who happened to be in the next town over from me, who was basically I'm not really hiring anybody right now. Can you type? And I said, I can. And I was like, oh, God, I don't want to be a secretary, but whatever. I just want to see what this is all about. And so I said, yeah, I can type. And he said, well, that's perfect because I have a dyslexic secretary. And I said, well, this is going to be fantastic. I could tell already. And I went in, I met him, and he's like, I don't usually hire people I don't know. He's like, but you're really enthusiastic. There's just something about you that I think that you'd be really good at this. He's like, do you want to go do surveillance this weekend? And I was like, hell yes. One of the guys took me out, and that day in the field was like the best day of my life. And granted, it was a job that like nothing happened on the assignment. I think we were just sitting in the car for hours. Maybe we followed somebody one place, and I was sold. I was in love, and I never looked back. And then he ended up retiring. I stayed with him for a long time until I qualified to get my own license. And I ended up, he wanted to retire. He went off to Florida, and I took over the business, kind of made it my own. And it was a couple years into that Miss Jennifer came on the scene. And that was
Lucky day, lucky day.
and she knew me in high school, so she could probably vouch for the fact that
Ooh.
Barry was shy in high school, but I'll tell you, she was a couple grades above me. And
Thanks for letting everybody know.
only a couple.
Yeah.
Right.
Two.
Only by two.
It was nothing.
So yes, we went to the same high school, and her friends were like the cool girls, you know? And in our high school, when you were a senior, you were allowed to go to lunch. And I was like, you know, sitting there in the lunchroom smiling, like just saying like, oh, I love those girls. They're so cool. And then they started bringing me out to lunch with them.
That's kind of how we met.
And that's, you know, and that's how we met. And I heard all her stories and funny things about her, what her and her friends used to do at the parties and stuff. But as we got older, we went our separate ways, and with work, college, her getting married and having children. But this job actually brought us back together. I was in sales for a really long time. I sold very large contracts in obviously a very prominent male dominant world of those guys signing the checks. They were all men. And I spent probably about 10 years in the industry. And as I started noticing in the beginning, the guys would love to hear my stories. I was a big athlete, full scholarship to play softball at Seton Hall University. You know, they would love that. They talked about my sports. But then as the years were getting, as I was putting in my years, I would see the girls coming in. They were getting younger. They were getting prettier. Their skirts were getting shorter. And that just was not my vibe. As I went to different trade shows and things like that, I was noticing that these girls were doing things or just putting themselves in positions to get those signed contracts. And I was sitting here, and those sports stories weren't really fun for these guys anymore. You know, they wanted more, and that's not me. So I said, you know, I'm sick and tired of being in sales, that abuse, and also setting unrealistic goals. It just put a bad, sour taste in my mouth. I utilized social media, and I just put it out there. I said, does anybody have a job for me? I'm willing to do anything. I want to try something different. Ring, ring, ring. I get a call from Barry. And then here we are 9 years later. And it's a dream come true that I never dreamt. I love it. I love it. I couldn't picture myself doing anything else. It's just,
I
it's
pictured
fantastic.
her doing it. I know I have very good
That's what she
intuition.
said.
I literally, I'm like, I could so see Jen doing this, and I think she's going to be great. And, and she's amazing.
Well, she taught me everything I know.
I love this.
I teach her a few things too.
I love that. Like, because with that, seeing that she needed a job, that you're like, okay, these are the skills that I saw. What are these skills that you're like, yes, she's going to make an amazing PI?
Well, number one, she said she would do anything.
Okay,
And that's what you have to do. You literally have to do anything and everything in this field.
Love it.
You know, I knew her personality. I knew that she was a lot of fun. I mean, we're hardworking, hard laughing over here. I mean, that's basically how we run the show. We're not corporate at all. We're pretty easygoing that way. But there are certain things about this type of career, this field, that aren't really negotiable, that you have to be able to do. And one of that is being able to do anything. And I knew she could do anything. And I knew that her look was fantastic. She is able to really take on any persona pretty much. And that's another quality that you have to have. The other things that are really important, like having some kind of instinct and being able to do detective work, so to speak, that I wasn't sure. Right. But she was amazing. We honed those skills, and she's great at, attention to detail, all of those things that make a good private investigator. And number one of those skills, probably most important, is tenacity. And she was a big sports star in high school. I knew that about her. She was a hard worker. So, I mean, how couldn't she be great?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're
I told you I love her. She's so sweet.
Oh, I love this because I hadn't really thought about it before, but a lot of people I look back in high school, they'd be online, on Facebook and stalking. So I'm like, okay, the skills, they do start at that age. Well, that being said, can you break down what exactly your job generally entails? Because I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions that the media has fed us about this.
Oh, 100% in terms
Bari
of misconceptions.
Yeah.
Just, Jen kind of touched on this, talking about her previous career in sales and it being a very male-dominated industry. It's the same is true for the private detective field. It is, and I hate to say it, and I don't really mean this in a bad way, it just turned out that way. It's really was meant to be a good old boys club, so to speak. I think that the biggest misconception that people have, well, there's like two. There's the fantasy one where you are Magnum PI or a Columbo, or you're a guy and you drive a hot car, or you're wearing a trench coat and you have a cigar and you're peering through the bushes, or you're whatever. And I think that that's the first misconception. It's got to be a guy, and it's got to fit one of those scenes. You have to have that look, or you're from prior law enforcement. You've had law enforcement experience. You were a cop. You were a detective. You're on the beat. Whatever you want to call it. That's what makes a great gumshoe. And it's really not. It's somebody that is able to be resourceful, tenacious. That's what makes a great private detective. And a lot of people are really shocked when I tell them I'm a private investigator. They're like, what? Oh my God, no, you're not. You don't look like one. The first thing they say, you don't look like one. I said, well, that's what makes me good. I don't look like one. All right. So I think there is definitely, while it is a very male dominated field, there's women in the field that are fantastic. And I wish there were more of them, because I've been doing this 20 years and it still seems like we are so lagging in this industry in terms of great women that do this work. And I'd love to see more.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why we're starting this podcast, is to get more people to understand. And there's a lot of young females now that are going to school and they want to get into criminology, but they don't want to be a police officer. And this is a great avenue for them. There's so many different branches that they could take from here.
Right.
They could start their own business like Bari. And I
just feel like there's just not enough exposure into the real lives of private investigators. What is the job all about?
Right. And I find that interesting. So within this industry, I know you've been a part of it for a while. Have you seen change? Have you seen the growth that you think there needs to be to include more women?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely think so, with especially with social media. And I think that, I see on LinkedIn, there's a lot more women, but just in comparison to the amount of men that do it, there just isn't. And I think people have this misconception that you have to be, go to school for criminology. You have to be in law enforcement. You have to, whatever the case may be. And that's not true. And we kind of want to spread that word that you could just be a girl who studied psychology and you're really interested in human behavior, and you can have a whole business that kind of encompasses all of the things that you're interested in. And people don't know that.
Human behavior is what we see every day.
Oof, yes. So I'm just curious. Let's say I came to you. I had an issue. I wanted to hire you. How does that look? How does that break down? What does your job look like in a really general way?
Okay. So in a general way, somebody comes to me with a problem, let's just say for sake of this discussion, it's a cheating partner. They would reach out to me, either, call the office, or they might meet me on the street, or any kind of random place where people find out that I'm a private investigator and they want to talk. They would just reach out. And the first thing I'd want to do is just discuss, number one, why they think that their partner's cheating on them. We go over the behaviors, we analyze their routine and the things that they're doing, because I want people to feel confident in themselves and their feelings and their intuition, because a lot of the times, especially when someone is facing, a cheating partner and they start feeling uneasy about the relationship, everyone says, "Oh, you're crazy. He's so nice," or "You're crazy. She's so in love with you. That's just crazy. Why are you thinking that?" And anytime somebody's telling you to doubt your feelings and that you're crazy, it's a terrible thing. So I don't want people to feel that way. So we'll have a discussion about why they think these things are happening. And on the rare occasions where somebody might be feeling paranoid, or they're feeling like something is going on, and they're unsure of their feelings, that could be the case, that there really is nothing going on. They're just, losing confidence in the relationship for whatever reason, maybe something that happened in their past. An investigation will bring truth to that as well. So what we would do is we would discuss those things, the patterns, behaviors, then implement a plan for some type of investigation strategy. And in most cases, for a cheating partner, it's usually surveillance, where we will watch them for a number of hours or a number of days, whatever it takes for my client to feel comfortable and secure that that person is or is not cheating. And typically, and this is what I tell all clients, because it's been, historically how our investigations have kind of panned out, is that if someone, barring the fact that maybe it's a long distance relationship, if someone is having an affair and their partner is living in the area where they live, they will usually see that person within 3 days. Within 3 days of doing surveillance, that will happen. And I got to tell you, and I think you can agree with this, when somebody does suspect their partner of cheating and everything is lining up and I think they're cheating and Jen thinks they're cheating, we see that like on the first day. It happens. It happens. So, so I think that's typically how it will go down.
Right. And on the opposite end of that, sometimes we're like, they're not cheating. And we see that right away too. Not right away, but after a few days, we're this is starting to look a little fishy here.
And interestingly enough, it's not that usually happens, and not because our client is, feeling paranoid, but it's because our client is doing something that they shouldn't. And they're kind of projecting, if you can believe it, on their partner. They maybe want out of that relationship, and they're like, "Oh God, maybe an investigator will help me out of this relationship and show me that they're cheating."
Yeah.
That does happen, unfortunately.
That makes sense. Well, how many of these cases, because I'm sure you have many, are typically things like affairs, or what types of cases do you generally have?
So the majority of our cases, we do a lot of surveillance and undercover work. We're very heavy in that part of the industry. But a lot of that has to do with personal injury cases. We do a lot of surveillance on people that were injured either by a doctor or slip and fall in a supermarket or slipping on a menu, whatever the case may be. And
motor vehicle accidents,
they're suing somebody,
some stuff like that,
right? And they're claiming some sort of injury, and that needs to be fleshed out. They want to see, are they really as injured as they say they are? And what's unique about this job, we're not looking to get the money shot or catch the guy. I mean, I love this job just being able to see both sides. And both sides are helpful to everybody, because we have people on the defense who want to know how badly this person was injured. And, we're thinking they're probably going to be happy to hear that they're running marathons, but they're also just as happy to hear they're really as injured as they say they are. And it alleviates a lot of questions for them. It helps them to develop a settlement strategy, a trial strategy. So all sides are important. So it's a critical component to those things. So we do that type of surveillance work, surveillance of cheating spouses. We do a lot of post-matrimonial work, which also involves a lot of background and records research and surveillance when people are collecting alimony, but they're really not entitled to that anymore because they are in a new relationship that is tantamount to marriage. And in that case, the payor is not obligated to pay alimony anymore. Child custody investigations, like high-level background investigations, social media research, all of those fun things.
Okay, so I saw that you actually did some for TV as well about finding your father.
Yes.
I didn't realize I was researching. I was like, wait, what is
You
this? Because
found
that's
that,
interesting.
yes.
Yes, I did find that. Hire me. Just kidding.
Pretty good.
But no, I found that interesting. What was your experience with that specifically?
I loved it. Yeah, it was great. I mean, to bring people together. One father was homeless, found him in a homeless shelter. So that, I mean, it's just very gratifying. And that's other work that we do.
We get calls like that all the time.
People want to
Emails.
find their birth mother. They want to find their sister.
What
What's
about
that?
the one that wanted us to find their ashes?
Oh yeah, we actually, I swear, we actually,
What?
yeah, somebody had a relative's ashes and they wanted us to try to help
Try to find them
track
in
down the
another
person to
state.
get the ashes from them.
Did you?
No. Let me draw the line
I should
somewhere.
ask. I need the ending to that.
There's somebody, we found cats. All right. I mean, every now and then, if I'm not like super busy and I really want to be creative and want something good to talk about, I'll be like, we'll take that cat job. Sure, why not?
this is okay. So let's do this.
But we are
I
pet
love
detectives too on the side.
I love that. You're all encompassing.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like my previous job was in social work, and one of the things that you have to be like a jack of all trades because you have to be able to go through this. And it sounds like a part of your job could also be like counseling. How often do you feel like you have to be a cornerstone for people during these really obvious difficult conversations?
So let's put it this way. Before I had an office administrator, I would be on the phone with people before I knew any better when I was like starting this business, and I would answer my phone. And right off the bat, somebody's telling me, their entire life story and what should they do. And of course, I was like, I'm all into it. I'm like, well, this is what you should do. How are you feeling? But a lot of it is counseling, and it to a great extent. And while I'm not a therapist, I can draw from my professional experience of my other clients, things that they did to improve their life and move on or not move on. I mean, that's a big part of the conversation. When I have a client who, again, let's go back to a cheating spouse, for example, depending on the outcome of our investigation, the trajectory of their whole life may have to change. Everything that they knew could be different or not. And that's okay. Just because somebody's cheating doesn't mean you got to pack your bags and go. Every situation is different. There's a lot of context, and it takes two to make it and two to break it. And I really encourage people to dig deep and think about those things. And before they engage a private investigator, to have a plan. And a plan doesn't mean a plan to act. It could be a plan not to necessarily react right away, but to know what's going on. That is the key, just to have some control that you weren't crazy, you weren't seeing things, you weren't imagining it. This is what's really happening. Bari got me this great surveillance video that just confirms my feelings. I'm going to put it in my back pocket, and I'm ahead of the game. I don't have to do anything now. They find some solace in that knowing they weren't crazy, they're in control, and they can do whatever they need to do at any point in time. I don't encourage people necessarily to take action, but I encourage them to think about a plan, to think about possible actions based on just my professional experience. And you do the same with the people that you talk to.
Absolutely. And, one of the things is just listening to Bari speak to the people that call in. She just provides them such good advice, and she'll be honest with them too. Like very honest. And
I am not a good liar.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible liar.
That's the number one thing in this job is that
That's why I had no friends in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't lie to people.
On our end, we have to, we're honest. Obviously, the people, our subjects aren't sometimes.
Yeah.
But, Bari will say, listen, this isn't for you, or this is for you. And, if you're thinking these things, then something must be going on.
Yeah.
Or
A hard part of this job is being sensitive to people's feelings, because you might hear a story like, that is freaking crazy. This lady's out of her mind. And sometimes we get people that call that are out there. They have questions about people, they think a dentist implanted something in their tooth, they're being tracked remotely. We've had a lot of calls like that, things about aliens. You want to be sensitive to people, but at the same time, you have to have that tact to try to send them a different avenue. So it's not something that's kind of like the impossible for us to help you with, but here's somebody that, here's a bug sweep guy that you can call, and that might help you, if you think that.
They all think that they're being listened to.
So, I've seen a lot of TikTok creators, especially one specific one that's an investigator, and I see her doing the cameras and watching, and she has a lot of times been like, there's nothing here, but, really, really fascinating. But with the fact that there's so many crossovers, what made you think podcast? Yes, we need to take what we do, our stories, and put it on a podcast, because you are, I think, one of the first ones that I've actually heard of doing this specific topic, which I love. But with this specific, like women in the industry, what does this look like? Let's have a conversation about why it's important that private investigators exist and why you might need one, as well as how do you get involved? So what made you say, yes, this is the platform for us?
So my thought process behind this was, and you brought up the Oxygen show, Finding My Father. And ever since I started this business, for the last, I'd say 15 years, I'd be contacted left and right from producers, different production companies, different networks, wanting to do a TV show about women private investigators. And this show, all these years later, whether it featured me or somebody else, does not exist. It just doesn't exist. And the reason why is, networks want to show the real deal. They want to see surveillance. Real surveillance, there's no way to gauge or manage how long it will take to get to an outcome. It could take hours, it could take days, it could take weeks even. Any kind of research that you're doing. Yes, we've had cases that have gone on for years. You're exactly right. So that always bothered me, that it just never got the exposure. And I wanted the exposure to be real. A lot of times, a lot of networks wanted me to be crazy, and they wanted me to expose all of my, my clients and my stories. I could never do that. I'm a real deal private investigator. So I thought, we need an angle to expose people to this industry where we get to tell our stories. And some of them are crazy. A lot of them are crazy. Yeah. We see a lot of crazy things that have nothing to do with our job. But while you're sitting on surveillance or doing whatever you're doing, you see it all. From like drug deals to just, I don't know,
drug
people making
out,
fighting, everything, throwing bottles at people in the middle, early in the morning. Fighting.
People picking their butt and sniffing it,
picking their nose. All kinds of terrible things. Anything that when you think someone's not watching, should I do this? Don't do it. Somebody's probably watching you. But anyway,
we see it all.
But so I thought this was a platform that I felt like we could be creative and have that creative outlet and really tell people about what we do. And also, how does that affect our lives? How does the outcome of an investigation affect our clients' lives? So it's not just about the crazy stories that people want to see. There'll be plenty of that. But it's also the tips. It's also, what happened to Pam, whose husband, was living a double life. We actually talk about what happened to Pam after, and how she was able to move on, and how she found success after being, a stay-at-home mom without a career. And where is she now after all the terrible things that have happened to her? How did she change her life for the better? So it's an interesting look, seeing all sides of the story, because there's always, the truth, three sides. yours,
Yeah.
mine, what's really happening.
Yeah.
So we kind of, that's kind of the focus of our lens, so to speak, of what we talk about.
I love that. So when is the podcast coming out? What is all of the details that we need to know so we can get ahead of it, subscribe to it, all those things?
Yes. We're launching on August 7th. And we'll be on Apple and Spotify, and you can also see a video component of our show on our YouTube channel.
Ooh, okay. So everybody get that on your schedule because we're not done talking. I just wanted to make sure we put that in there, and then we're going to put it at the end as again. But just go ahead and get that in our minds because we need to remember
August 7th.
August 7th. Got it. So I find it fascinating because PI is so interesting because it's not just, yes, you've got the kind of like the tea bits that you're like, oh, I want to know about this. But you also kind of go down like almost a true crime route as well. Do you see an overlap in that for your show?
I think, the investigation component, what it is, going through just the strategy, going through the steps, like coming up. You always have to, although, we are not biased in the sense that we know somebody did this or we know somebody did that. We have to have some kind of theory or hypothesis to take us down certain roads to flush them out. Is this are we going down the right path? Or should we be going down this path instead? And I think, the strategy of how we do that is really interesting. Just even the steps to find a Facebook account of somebody that's using an alias, how we use our databases, how we flush out relatives, how we, different tips and tricks, like using unique names. Like there's a lot of Samantha McVeys out there, but we're going to find that one relative of yours who has this really, really uncommon name that nobody else could have. And we're going to find them really quick on Facebook. And then we're going to search all of their friends. And then we're going to go down here.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, boom. We find a picture of you.
Right.
And it's it all comes together.
Yeah. So it's there's a lot of programs out there that say like, oh, we could find there's no AI that can do what I do. There just isn't. And they say, and I'm sure it's not just me, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that are good at doing that research. That makes a great investigator because it could take hours, if not days, to do it sometimes. And it's that tenacity that gets the answer. There's no AI that's going to figure out, Jen is actually using the Facebook page name, I love cats or whatever, and, connect it to her. You got to go through all of those channels and find the connection. So, that's obviously a very simple investigation. It's not true crime or anything, but the methodology is the same. And that's what people find interesting.
And sometimes we don't find a picture. Sometimes we don't find all the full information, just little pieces.
Sometimes it just doesn't exist.
And we have to go out on the field. And it's not so much doing investigation through our computer, but it's actually doing investigations out on the road, not knowing where the person looks like, where they live, like kind of just trying to put things together.
That
it's a lot of work.
That's a great point because a lot of people think like, well, I could find out anything on the internet. No, there's some things you just can't. You just can't. And you have to go out and you have to actually, get in the field and pound the pavement and knock on doors and do interviews and, do surveillance on people, places and things. And that's how you get your answers.
You got to get through the gatekeepers. I always say it's one of my favorite words is to think fast. It's coming up with a quick story to get them to answer your question. So if I knock on a window of an apartment building, but it's security, and I said, oh, I need to see so-and-so, and my grandma made some cookies for her. She can't come down. Oh, she's not allowed down. I'm like, please, can I go up there? I have cookies for her, and you just have to like learn to be quick and fast and be creative and whatever. Sometimes that cookie thing could take you wherever, but
to the non-existent grandma.
I just made that one up on the fly. I never did my grandma's cookies, but I use my grandma for a lot of things.
Grandma, she's still waiting on those cookies.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yes. Oh, yes. One thing I wanted to go back to, we've been talking about how this has traditionally been both in media and in history, a male-dominated industry, but this is changing. One thing I was thinking about when I was imagining, like, if I wanted to go to a PI, I would want to go to a woman. Like, I feel like there would be situations, especially if I'm going to cry my heart out about, I don't know, this guy I think is bad news. Like, I just feel like there's certain situations where going to a woman, I would like to have that option. Do you feel that you've seen that? Do you feel that there's maybe a different skill set? I know you said that, you know, people don't think private investigators are women, so therefore you kind of have that going for you.
Interestingly enough, I mostly hear that from men that want a female investigator because they have conjured up in their mind it's going to be like a cop. It's going to be real detective looking, and I don't want to get caught, and I want it to be not threatening in any way. I think it's pretty even in terms of women that have expressed, I feel comfortable talking to a woman, but men are really great with it. And I think they kind of think that I'm going to help them in some way, or they're feeling less threatened by me in a sense that I'm not judging them like another guy would. Like, oh, you're letting your wife cheat on you, buddy. Like, that's pretty messed up. You're a real, you know what, like, I think that the other flip side is I've had clients who were like, I really need to work with you. You're a woman. I think you're going to be great. There is a component. There are certain men that think they're going to control me and manipulate me in some way to do certain things or the way they think they want the investigation to be. So it's an interesting dynamic being a woman and being able to know, those types of clients. And I've gotten pretty astute at like figuring out who they are. There's certain triggering words that they'll say. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing this guy. I don't care if he wants a woman. There's other women he can go and find. It's not going to be me. But I think there are, and I think I've had this expressed to me more from men clients than from women, that they are more comfortable working with a woman. And part of it, I think, being their own insecurities and the threat to the subject that we're watching, that they don't want to get caught. They're scared. They're nervous about it. And they feel more secure having a woman do the job.
Yes, because nobody thinks a woman is following
They don't want to. They don't want that cop feel, I guess.
She's getting tips.
Give me a lot to think about. Oh, okay. Well, as you said, a lot of this can be very, heartbreaking or difficult or whatever to share, perhaps embarrassing to share. This is going to sound like a strange question, but
I've heard it all.
Would you? I mean, yeah, sure. Now that I say that, this is not even going to sound strange to you at all. But like at the end of the investigation, do you feel like people have closure? Like, what is the feeling that they have?
I think for the most part, yes. There is definitely a sense of closure for a lot of people. We get a lot of repeats. Whether one way or the other. So even when we have a case where we caught their partner cheating, they come back to us a couple years later. And that's why it's so important when I had that initial conversation with them to say, you know what? Don't go blowing this out of the water. Don't take this video and run to your partner and say, I got you, because you might not leave. That person might say, I'm going to change. Everything's going to be great. And then guess what? A year later, you're finding yourself feeling the same way. And now they know that you've had surveillance on them before because you showed them the video. It's going to be that much harder to catch them next time. So I say, put it in your back pocket so you really figure out where things are going.
Well, obviously, y'all see a lot, as well as you've been through a lot. I know there were points that you had people threatening you and or accusing you of being the downfall of their relationship as if you had something to do with it. What do you do for yourself and also, this is not a 9-to-5 job. Obviously, you are constantly having to be on, looking around. What do you do to disconnect? Because I can't imagine it's that easy.
We have, even when we're not in the field or doing investigations, so, we have investigators that report to us. So we're constantly, unfortunately, and as a business owner, it's not a 9-to-5. You're right. So I guess the best way to disconnect is like the one opportunity
to go on vacation.
That's it. And say, please don't call me, please. Everything be good.
Yeah. Bari and I are always working 24/7, but we do that because we love it. This is Bari's business, so obviously it's her life, and I love it, and I love Bari, and I want to make Bari happy, and I want our business to grow, and I really like being exactly where I am today. I wish I started a long time ago with her, but when I'm home, we're still doing our normal, on the weekends, doing our daily activities, and at the same time answering phone calls, so it's the same thing. My wife may be like, hey, what? I'm like, hold on a second.
So what do you do anything to, what do you like? You have hobbies that you do.
I mean, I like to, over the years, things have changed. I used to be like very into like being an athlete and doing like obstacle course races and stuff. But now I enjoy like my time home with, my wife and my stepson, and going to his wrestling matches or football, or, that's kind of, I have a big family. So, spending time, with them and just doing little things. I live near the beach, going for a walk with my dogs. I mean, it's just a little time to relax, and then I'm back out there. But private investigation, it's not just an 8-hour day.
Right.
You never know where you're going to end up, how long, your subject's going to be out and about, and you have to stay with them, till the end.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, I think my longest hour day was a 17-hour day, and my longest drive following someone was from New Jersey to Ohio.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
And you really don't know, but I can blend into any situation. The car is packed and loaded. So if I have to follow Bari home right now, I can spy on her. If she changes to go out on a boat, I will be bored.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll be here.
So essentially, you just try to grasp a moment just to have a little bit of peace.
That's how you can.
Yeah.
Look, I think that's how you live your life anyway. When things are great, you go with it and you're happy, and you got to try and be in that moment. I prefer not to look at my phone or anything like that. And that I'm happy for a minute.
Yeah, we take turns. We'll say, okay, Bari.
We share. We share.
This is your peaceful moment. You get it
today. I'll take all the calls, and we're pretty good about that. So
I like that.
It's a good balance.
That's
we
good.
share.
Well, not that I'm asking for a specific reason, and I don't have any plots or anything, but if I were to need to get off the grid, what would you say? What are the steps and things I should be doing in order for me to be not found?
Don't have a phone.
And get off social media.
Get off. Start off slow. Okay. No social media. That's the best way to go. Okay. And then there's obviously other companies that can help wipe you off all of those databases that come up. Like we see a Samantha McVey that is, 20 years old and lives in blah, 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 blah. There's products out there that can help you work through wiping that out as much as possible. I honestly, it's really hard. It's really hard, but social media would definitely be number one. Using certain applications on your phone, obviously the ones that have location and tracking, you want to get rid of those.
Get a track phone.
Yeah, get a track phone. You can still use your fancy phones if you want, but just I wouldn't use Siri or Snapchat or anything that has maps and things that, Google that share your location. Make sure those are all shut off. And I would, number one, social media, I think is the killer of all things.
Yeah.
It's fun for a minute, and then it's just sucks you down a black hole, and everybody knows everything about you that you wish that they didn't. And
people that don't know about you can find things out about you.
And we always remark every time we have a case where it's like this person is just blowing up their social media, literally telling us where they are going. We're going to Cape May for the weekend and we're staying in this hotel. And I'm like, Jen, you're going to this hotel in Cape May.
Then I'm packing my bag.
She's packing her bag. And sure enough, the girl is there. We're watching her for 3 days. Well, I got her with her family. She's got her room. We're all set up. Every time that happens, I'm like, this isn't going to happen again. These people are going to get smart.
Nope.
Nope. Everybody's dumb. Everybody's still dumb. It's unbelievable. They just cannot resist. So the first way to get off the grid, stop Stop sharing your stuff,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to delete my
those
social media.
stories.
Got it. I'm going to do that now. Just kidding.
Well, you're doing pretty good
Samantha.
because we couldn't find anything out about you. Annie, that's a different story.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
I'll wait for that
I'm just
fanfic name.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a fun conversation. I know that we could talk so much more. So if you're welcome back anytime.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes. If you're ever in Atlanta, we're always around.
Come see us.
I've been there. I like it.
Yes.
I've never been there, so
I have been.
we gotta
I was there
go.
for finding my father, actually.
Oh, see?
One of our cases is there.
I was going to say, there's plenty
Oh.
of cases down here, probably.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. No doubt. But in the meantime, before we get to meet, you do have a new podcast. The first season's on infidelity, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
primarily.
Ooh.
Primarily.
Yeah.
All right. So can you tell the good listeners where they can find you?
Well, you can find us on Apple and Spotify. We launch on August 7th. And if you want to be featured on our show so we can talk about either your story or some advice, you can email us at theprivatizedpodcast@gmail.com.
Do y'all have social media we can follow?
Yeah, our live component of the show you can see on our YouTube channel. We also have an Instagram page and we also have a TikTok page, all at Private Eye Podcast.
Awesome. And you can contact us. You can email us at stephanieandmomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff One Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store. We have a YouTube page. And we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Special shout out to Alex, producer of the Private Eyes podcast, who helped set this up. And as always, a thank you to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.